built in a random closet. The steps of the second map are all about doing challenges for a magical fish so that it finds the pommel for you. That description should be enough to tell you that it makes no sense narratively, regardless of how charismatic and awesome the red herring is. The final map is collecting the 3 sword pieces from the MFAA that need to be airdropped in. For some reason, they can't be airdropped in until we fix a wall with Boolean root.
What?
The Honda 4th of July sales event is here, with a brilliant deal.
Lonzo Ball has been diagnosed with a torn meniscus in his left knee. That's the same left knee that gave him trouble in the regular season. He missed 30 games with a sprained MCL and a left knee contusion. It is a little bit concerning that he's having issues with the exact same knee. And this month he had a PRP injection, which is when you use the patient's own blood to promote the healing of muscles and tendons, etc. The good news is that Lonzo is expected to be back on the court for the start of training camp.
Okay.
So we'll see if that actually happens. Now,
Once upon a time, there was a little British show that became a little American show that became the biggest sitcom phenomenon of the decade. It kicked off another wave of attempts to adapt British sitcoms for American audiences, and a first wave of mockumentary TV shows that is still thriving. But there would never be another hit like The Office. Hey guys, I'm Brendan with Cinematica, and we're here to dive 107 facts deep into the first season of the series that made us all rethink our day jobs, The Office. Everybody knows that the Dunder Mifflin we've come to know and love isn't the original Office. But did you know that the idea for an American adaptation of The Office came from producer Ben Silverman? He had just seen an episode of the British version while on vacation in London, and he liked the show so much that he wasted no time in securing the rights for an American adaptation. Though the show really wasn't considered for major networks early in its development, it ended up there by happy accident. When the executive who wanted to bring The Office to FX moved to NBC, he took the project with him, which is for the best. It's hard to imagine how Michael Scott's little workplace would fare among the company of the icy surgeons of Nip Tuck or the hardened cops of The Shield. That didn't mean NBC wasn't wary, however. They had just attempted to adapt another British show, Coupling, thinking that it might be a decent replacement for Friends. But it hadn't gone as well as they'd hoped. In the words of NBC executive Jeff Zucker, Coupling just sucked. So the cards were stacked against The Office from the beginning. But Ricky Gervais had different opinions about bringing the show to America, despite the hesitation from executives and fans. He said, quote, "I think people are always going to be wary of a remake. It's a tradition. But this remake is aimed at the 249 million Americans who didn't see the original TV show. There's not going to be many Texas farmhands going, ugh, not another version, I can't believe it," end quote. So Silverman knew he'd have to bring out the big guns to get people interested. Veteran comedy writer Greg Daniels was brought on to adapt the show for American audiences, bringing some serious credibility from his days as a writer for both SNL and The Simpsons. His SNL experience would later inspire him to hire several writer-performers, the first being BJ Novak, hired as a writer and cast as Ryan after Daniels was impressed by his stand-up routine. "He was a rising stand-up who I thought had a bright future, and I wanted to snap him up," said Daniels. This was kind of a big win for Novak, who at the time had been working as an improviser for the MTV show Punk'd. It was 2005 after all. Then of course there was the matter of where to shoot. Daniels considered a few different locations for the show's setting before settling on Scranton, Pennsylvania. These other possible locations included Utica, New York, and Nashua, New Hampshire. Sort of by definition, said Daniels, the town we picked wouldn't have a lot of glitzy stuff going on. The location they eventually scouted to be the Dunder Mifflin office was conveniently across the street from a local bar called The Office. Maybe too conveniently. If you think that The Office nailed your workplace, there's a reason for that. Daniels made sure that the show's writers spent time researching in real offices in between episodes. Taking it another step further, the computer scene in The Office also had internet. So that means that when the actors look like they're aimlessly searching the internet at work, they probably are. Part of what makes The Office iconic is its writing. The rules that guided storytelling on The Office would shift over time, but in the beginning they were very strict. Chief amongst them, no music that doesn't come from inside the world of the show. The radio, a ringtone, karaoke, and so forth. A frequent problem that the writers ran into was the length of the scripts, which often clocked in at 10 pages too long. I guess sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. But good writing can only get you so far. You need to find the right actors for the job in order to really sell it. Daniels employed a pretty unorthodox approach to casting the show. Instead of having the actors read from scripts, he asked them questions in order order for them to improvise responses in character. That skill would really come in handy later. Steve Carell, then mostly known for his work on The Daily Show and in Anchorman, nailed the audition right away. When being asked to define his use of que sera sera, Carell memorably improvises, "It's kind of a non sequitur," is what I've been told. But Carell was not the only actor up for the part of Michael. The incredibly impressive list of considered actors included Paul Giamatti, Martin Short, Hank Azaria, Bob Odenkirk, Alan Tudyk, and Paul F. Tompkins. Carell's involvement in the show was almost jeopardized by his being cast as, Blevin in a terrible-sounding NBC sitcom called Come to Papa, which followed the foibles of a reporter-turned-comedian. Thankfully, it was swiftly taken off the air, and Carell became the iconic Michael Scott. Rainn Wilson auditioned for Michael before being cast as Dwight, but bombed the audition due to a, in his words, terrible Ricky Gervais impression. Some of the future heavyweights he beat out for the role included Seth Rogen, Patton Oswalt, Judah Friedlander, and Matt Besser. Rainn Wilson watched every episode of the British original to prepare for his role, while Steve Carell didn't watch any of it, worried that he might start impersonating Ricky Gervais. Maybe he would have given that role to Wilson before his audition. Phyllis Smith was a casting associate on the first episode who was cast in the show after impressing the director during auditions with other actors. Other near misses casting-wise include Angela Kinsey, who auditioned for Pam before being cast as, well, Angela. John Krasinski and Jenna Fisher were almost unbearably cute from the start. After auditioning with different options for Jim and Pam, they both told each other that they were each other's favorite. Get a room, dudes. But if you want to imagine an alternate universe for Jim and Pam, picture Parks and Recreation's Adam Scott and Transparent's Kathryn Hahn, who both got pretty close. When Krasinski was finally cast as Jim, Jenna Fisher says she burst into tears. Save them for the end of season 2, Jenna. It's gonna be a wild ride. Meanwhile, when Krasinski found out that he was gonna play Jim, he went and filmed the shots of Scranton, Pennsylvania that make up the opening credits of the show. Funnily enough, other than John Krasinski's opening credit shots, none of the first season ended up actually being filmed in Scranton. What's more, once the show was a big hit, someone realized that the piece of paper highlighted in the opening credits was an LA zoning document. Start padding out your resumes now, college kids. Both John Krasinski and Mindy Kaling, as well as Ellie Kemper, who would eventually play Erin, were interns for Late Night with Conan O'Brien ages before they were famous. It's no coincidence that most of The Office's supporting cast is made of improvisers. Greg Daniels specifically hired people he knew would bring their own material to the roles. Other writers besides Novak pad out the cast's comedy pedigree. Paul Lieberstein was cast as Toby, while Mindy Kaling was cast as Kelly. Additionally, writer Larry Wilmore of Blackish, Insecure, and The Nightly Show had a cameo as diversity trainer Mr. Brown for the show's iconic second episode. Not every writer-actor was comfortable on screen, however. Lieberstein, who wrote season 1's Healthcare, was so shy that he never included any lines for Toby in any episode he'd go on to write. While there is a red-headed actress sitting at Meredith's desk in the pilot, that is not Meredith. It was not until Diversity Day that Kate Flannery was cast as Meredith. Eric Stonestreet, aka Cameron on Modern Family, was almost cast as Kevin. We all love Kevin, but that would have been a much longer road to your Emmy there, Eric. While Jim and Ryan may have had a contentious relationship on show, off-camera BJ Novak and John Krasinski are childhood friends, having attended Newton South High School in the suburbs of Boston together. But they aren't the only classmates who appear on the show together. Brian Baumgartner, Kevin, attended the same high school as Ed Helms, who would later be cast as Andy. Early on, the crew discovered a logistical problem: how to show action that couldn't realistically be captured by a documentary crew. That required constant meetings and intricate planning to keep consistent. By the end of the series, this role became considerably looser, however, a change not all fans were happy with. Daniels decided to make the pilot of The Office almost identical to the BBC's pilot, feeling deviation from that starting point would be a very risky thing to do. But that turned out alright, as the pilot is the second most watched episode of the entire series, garnering a whopping 11 million viewers. The authenticity of the show's documentary feel came out of one really smart hire, Randall Einhorn, one of the directors of Survivor. Yes, that Survivor was brought on as cinematographer. The tribe has spoken. It was a good choice. Krasinski and Fisher each snagged about 20,000 an episode at the beginning of the series. Suffice it to say, that number got a lot higher. Diversity Day was the first episode of the series where the writers were able to write for specific actors, so it may be there that you notice the cast's signature quirks really coming into focus. It was also the first episode of a TV show that NBC debuted online, streaming on MySpace in advance of its premiere. This decision helped attract new viewers to The Office, but sadly couldn't save MySpace itself. Sorry, Tom. In the pilot, Dwight can be heard singing Little Drummer Boy, which is later revealed to be Angela's favorite song. Jenna Fisher says Healthcare is her favorite episode of the first season. This may be thanks to the experience of filming it, which saw Rainn Wilson continuously improvising names for fake diseases to keep his castmates in stitches. Diseases like hot dog fingers would probably make me lose my cool too. Even though the cast and crew were having a great time on set, that didn't mean they were confident about the show's success. Actor Oscar Nunez, who plays the straight-laced accountant Oscar, kept his jobs as a server and babysitter while filming. It was probably a sensible move considering the show's chances, but thankfully it proved unnecessary. BJ Novak also had some doubts. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune, he talks about checking the IMDb message boards 100 times a day and reading comments about the show failing. And even though he was in the show and wrote some of it, he still thought,
Don't let bad tires ruin your Independence Day. Visit Discount Tire this Friday and Saturday and Sunday on...
I might be right. Like Novak, most of the writers of The Office found their way on screen, creating some memorable characters. Writer Michael Schur may have stayed behind the camera for the first season, writing The Alliance, but he'd later join the cast, kind of, as Dwight's weird cousin Mose, in addition to creating, literally every show that's on TV right now. As we know, some of the best writing The Alliance, but he'd later join the cast, kind of, as Dwight's weird cousin Mose, in addition to creating, literally every show that's on TV right now. As we know, some of the best parts of The Office were not scripted. In the episode Basketball, Greg Daniels told the cast to just, play basketball, and they kept the best parts. So all of that trash talking is authentic. And the scene where Roy hits Jim in the face was sort of improvised as well. The actors had actually rehearsed this, but while filming, actor David Denman's elbow accidentally met John Krasinski's face. Even though Krasinski was like, hey, I'm bleeding, can we cut? They just kept filming. Real blood was spilled that day. Season 1 of the show only had 6 episodes, with the season finale Hot Girl being the first episode written by Mindy Kaling. It was directed by Amy Heckerling, who also directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And yup, you can do a double take there because that was Amy Adams playing purse saleswoman and hot girl Katie. She wasn't a big name at the time, but mere months after that episode aired, Junebug was released, the indie film that would bag her first Oscar nomination. By the time BJ Novak tried to get Adams to return for a cameo in season 7's Threat Level Midnight, she was far too busy getting an Oscar nomination basically every other year to do it. Mindy Kaling would go on to write many more episodes of The Office and become everybody's favorite drama queen, Kelly Kapoor. Kelly Kapoor first appeared in episode 2 of season 1. Before writing for The Office, Kaling had co-written and acted in an off-Broadway play called Matt and Ben, about none other than Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Kaling said that she was making $500. Before writing for The Office, Kaling had co-written and acted in an off-Broadway play called Matt and Ben, about none other than Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Kaling said that she was making $500 a week and felt like she owned the city. Her feelings changed a little bit more once she joined the writing team with The Office. Kaling recalls being excited to be around the impressive talent of her co-workers, but also terrified and silent during the first season. Her co-workers remember that. That time differently, however. They've assured Kaling that she was not silent and expressed her opinions very loudly. Truly a boss attitude that Kelly Kapoor herself would be proud of. It was in fact Kaling who decided that Michael Scott would have a man crush on Ryan, who would also be the love interest of Kelly, a real Office love triangle. But these next couple of facts are not going to make diehard fans happy. The second episode was watched by only 6 million people in comparison to the pilot episode. Those numbers would be huge today, but at the time it was seen as a disastrous stumble for the show. This could be attributed to NBC moving the show from Thursday night to Tuesday night in between those episodes, confusing potential viewers. Hot Girl scored even lower, a 2.2 rating with a 10 share. For those of you who are on big Nielsen heads, that basically means bad. The critical reception to the first season was also lukewarm at best. Critics largely saw another failed attempt.
Oh my god! Are you fucking me right now, man? You gotta be kidding me. That's actually dumb, man. That's dumb. That's dumb. I couldn't even find him.
attempt to translate British humor for American audiences. Reaction to the first season was also lukewarm at best. Critics largely saw the show as another failed attempt to translate British humor for American audiences. Maybe, said one critic, after The Office dies a quick death on NBC, the network will decide that trying to Americanize British TV comedies isn't